going on a medical mission or a surgical mission trip is like life goal for me, bucket list kind of thing. I have wanted to do that for forever. I am passionate about operating room nursing, perioperative nursing, and I think that's pretty evident to anybody who ever sees anything that I do on social media. But to actually put my passion into action in a place where it's not because I'm getting a paycheck, it's not because I'm just doing my job, but I'm just going to go do what I love and go help people who need it. Like super, super big goal for me.
Clock in, scrub up, and join us behind the red line. You're listening to First Case, a perioperative podcast bringing you exciting interviews, engaging discussions, and innovative solutions that are changing the way patients receive surgical care. Each episode, we talk to frontline staff, perioperative leadership, and nursing entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the back table to the boardroom, from wheels in to wheels out, we tackle the real-life issues affecting the OR. Whether you're tuning in for surgical service education or inspiration, we're glad you're here. And now, it's time to roll back and start the first case.
On this special release First Case podcast, Chris and I are going to be talking all about my recent mission trip to Honduras. And spoiler alert for season 11, a few of the guests that we'll be interviewing during the upcoming season actually served with me on that trip. As a result, Honduras came up in conversation quite a few times. When we were finished recording the season, Chris told me that we should probably record an episode about the mission trip so that all of you could be up to date and understand the Honduras references. But Chris, it was a great idea, and I think it really lends some understanding to the references of the season now that we are having this conversation today.
Well, and also, it was a wonderful experience. And too few people get the opportunity or know that there are opportunities out there to go on these medical mission trips. I'm so grateful that you got to do it and that we're going to share it with our listeners today.
It's a lot of fun, and I'm actually glad that we're taking the time to share that story. I hope people benefit from it and learn something from it. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with this special release episode of the First Case podcast.
Hi, I'm Chris Blevins.
And I'm Melanie Perry.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to First Case.
Welcome to this special release episode of the First Case podcast. We are anxiously awaiting the launch of season 11. But while we wait, Chris and I are going to be talking about medical missions and my recent trip to Honduras. It was absolutely a life-changing experience. And I've written a couple of posts about it and talked to some people about it, but I haven't shared the whole story publicly until today. So Chris, take it away. What burning questions do you have for us to talk about today?
First of all, massive case of FOMO throughout this entire season. As we interviewed so many amazing people from season 10 and season 11, there's so many of those connections were made on this incredible trip. And so, getting to meet them for the hour-ish that we are together on a podcast, I just got 1 ounce of how incredible these people are. And you got to develop real relationships. And so, I have been, totally been asking. I need to know. So
we need to know the details.
We need to know. I need to know all the tea,
right.
as the teenagers say nowadays.
Doesn't that make us sound old by saying as the teenagers say? I think it does. Yeah,
it really does.
I am old.
I know.
I'll embrace it.
We are. There's old age is a gift. And I'm going to take it with or without the wrinkles, by the way. So we'll go there. So the first thing I always ask anybody that I interview, and I don't want you to ever be an exception to that, because I know a lot of people know you through the First Case podcast and all of the work that you do with AORN and as an advocate for the perioperative space. But I want you to introduce yourself, just you. Who's Melanie Perry outside of that realm?
Wow, that is actually a very unexpected question because I'm so used to people knowing me as the nurse who does first case and the circulating life and all of those things. But outside of the nursing world, I'm Melanie. I love to garden. I will sit and write and draw and sing and play. I'm very artistically minded when it comes to everything that I do that I enjoy. Speaking of being old, I've been married to my husband for 22 years this year. We were high school sweethearts and married right after we both graduated from college, and we have 3 kids. So I have a son who is an Army ROTC at Auburn University. And then I have a 17-year-old daughter who reminds me daily that she will be graduating next year.
Oh, Lord.
And then I have a 13-year-old son who is still hanging around with me and stuck with me for a while. So they definitely keep me busy when I am not doing all of the other things that I do. But that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Yeah. People ask all the time, like, how do you do what you do? And I think it's called like just blissful ignorance. Like, I don't think about it. So, yeah, you're right there in the same boat. Absolutely.
One thing at a time, and you just handle it, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you just keep going because that's all you can do.
And that's what makes you good in the operating room too. So
exactly.
So how did you get the opportunity to even go on a mission trip amidst everything else that you get to do?
Okay, well, that actually is because of the First Case podcast. One season a while back, I was gathering guests and looking for different people to interview. And I had seen Dr. Michael Redler on LinkedIn and seen his work with One World Surgery. And going on a medical mission or a surgical mission trip, it was like life goal for me, bucket list kind of thing. I have wanted to do that for forever. I am passionate about operating room nursing, perioperative nursing, and I think that's pretty evident to anybody who ever sees anything that I do on social media. But to actually put my passion into action in a place where it's not because I'm getting a paycheck, it's not because I'm just doing my job, but I'm just going to go do what I love and go help people who need it. Like super big goal for me. And so we interviewed Dr. Redler, and the first time, we have now interviewed him 3 times, by the way, but the first time we interviewed him was all about his medical mission work, his work with One World Surgery. And through the process of interviewing him, I really kind of felt like I was really just kind of interviewing him about the particular organization so I could make sure that I could go too. And then it was one of those, hey, I'm going next time. You better be going with me. I'll make sure you know when we go. And so we kind of stayed in touch. And sure enough, when the calendar came out for 2023, when they were going to be going on their mission trip, he shot me an email and I'm like, hey, I'm going to apply. He's like, okay, well, I'll let them know to make sure that you get approved.
Awesome.
Because like the way it's set up, a lot of these organizations, or the facilities that go, they have their own people. And so their own people fill a bunch of the different slots. So for me to be an outsider, so to speak, wanting to go, he had to just make sure it got approved. But he did. And so I got approved to go on the trip and kind of put my money where my mouth is and actually kind of go where I said I wanted to go. But yeah, it was all because of Dr. Redler.
He is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for our 4th interview with him, which we've already tied him down. Like, it's going to happen. Yeah, so
it's going to happen.
It has to. But I have spoken with One World Surgery as an educator about getting mission trips and having this experience for my students. And it's just a phenomenal organization. I loved every minute of getting to talk to them. And
they were great people.
Yeah, I'm so glad that's who you all were able to go through. What did you have to do to prepare once you were accepted for that particular mission?
So we first, you did the application, and it's a pretty good size application. You get it filled out and you get it submitted and you hear back that you've been approved. And then after that, because I'd filled my application out like in March of last year and the mission trip wasn't until December. So, I was a little on top of things. So we had time. And as I think back about the other things I had to do, I, already had a passport, so I didn't have to worry about getting a passport. I did have to look into some immunizations for the country that we were going to make sure that I was up to date on those. And then the rest of it was really, as we got closer, we had a couple of big group information sessions where they kind of told us what we needed, told us what to expect. There was also some other paperwork that we had to fill out and submit, kind of that proving that we really did know our stuff and that we were okay to be going to take care of patients, all those kinds
Not
of legitimate
that you
things.
Googled it or stayed in a Holiday Inn Express.
I didn't get my degree out of a Cracker Jack box. I legitimately know how to do this. And so, those kinds of additional pieces of information, which is good. I mean, you want the organization you go with to actually take qualified people. So got all that submitted, and then it was really just kind of a make sure you bring everything you need, and here's the travel details. And that was the other thing too. I also had to, I don't know why I didn't think about this till now. I actually had to raise the money. I had to go, and I had to be able to afford to go. And so that time between March and then when we, had to have our money submitted and whatnot, it was really spent with me fundraising and getting the money I needed.
Well, and so if I remember correctly, it's almost like a compound that you stay in. So it's not that you had to get a hotel. It's mainly just travel and then just being able to function while you're there, right?
Yeah. We had a volunteer fee that we had to pay, and that fee went towards, covering our expenses while we were there, but also that money goes towards providing surgical care for the patients and making sure that everything that they offer for the patients is free of charge to the patients.
So
wonderful. It's going to a good cause.
Absolutely. Well, so you finally get to go. What does arrival day look like? I mean, I would have been a bucket of nerves. I don't know about you.
Okay, well, so fun fact about me, I have only traveled out of the United States once before going on this trip, and that was with my husband and kids when we went to St. Lucia back in 2022. I've traveled a lot of places within the U.S., but just never left the country, unless you count going to Mexico when I lived in San Diego. But I don't think that really counts because I wasn't flying anywhere.
Yeah, not as big a journey in that instance.
Yeah, not as big a journey. Yeah, because I lived in San Diego. It was like a mile down the road. And hey, we were in Mexico. So a little different. But that morning, I had to be at the airport. In where I live in Selma, Alabama. There is no big regional airport here. So I have to go and drive, an hour or so to get to an airport that would then get me from Alabama over to DFW. And then from Dallas, we flew down to Honduras. And it was just me on the flight. I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know anybody on this mission trip except Dr. Redler. And he was taking a different route because he's up in Connecticut. So I didn't even see him on any of the flights. But it was really just a matter of get to the airport, get all the international travel documents and stuff that you had to have, get all your boxes checked, and then get to Dallas, wait for the flight. And then the flight itself, it really, was it three or 4 hours long? It wasn't that long, but it was really neat to, when we start flying into the country, that eagerness to open the windows and look out and see what it looks like from the sky. And so, you get to see the geography and see the land that you're flying into. And it's beautiful. And it was really pretty to get that bird's eye view as we flew in.
Oh, wow. It kind of centers your mind too. I would think okay, now this is really happening, Yeah,
I'm really here. Holy crap.
So once you're there, I know you had information sessions before, like you said, but did you have an initial kind of like a huddle, like what we do in the operating room every day?
Okay. So cool. Fun fact. With this particular organization, and I'm sure other organizations do something similar, but my only experience is with One World Surgery. But they met us in the airport. So, and they have these bright orange shirts on that say One World Surgery. So you're not worried about going off with some random guy named Bob that you don't know if they're with anybody. You knew who you were meeting. They had their checklists. And when you came through customs, they're like, okay, what's your name? Go over here. Make sure you go here. They were making sure everybody was there. And we all met up at a coffee shop outside of the baggage claim until everybody was there. And then they had 2 buses that came to pick us up, and we all loaded up in our buses. They provided us pizza, which was Domino's pizza. It was weird, but kind of cool that you're however far away you are from home, and here they are just turning out boxes of Domino's pizza. And you're like, okay, well, this isn't okay, let's eat some pizza.
Yeah.
And so that it was just kind of funny.
When we lived, just a side note, when we moved to Germany, I was 6 months pregnant, and we had 2 kiddos, and they're young, and that flight is 9 hours. And when we get there, we know nothing. But we saw a Pizza Hut and we saw a McDonald's and we saw a KFC.
Yes.
And I think the first 3 or 4 dinners were at Pizza Hut.
Hey, why not?
Landstuhl, Germany. Yeah, go figure. But, it is nice to see something that looks familiar, even though you're excited for what's to come,
right.
Yeah.
So
you meet everybody, you're finally there. Walk me through a typical day during the mission.
Okay, well, let me walk you through that drive first.
Oh.
Because that was an experience.
I didn't even know to ask about that, but I can't even.
So we landed at the airport in Honduras, and the place where we were staying was 2.5-ish hours away, and it was up in the mountains in Honduras.
Oh Lord!
So we had to drive from the airport to where we were going to be at the surgery center. And holy smokes, people in other countries drive very differently than most people in America. I'm not going to say everybody, but most people in America, I feel like it's a little bit safer. But, we're in these buses and it's just I just felt like a free for all on the road. And it's, one lane both ways. You're going around these mountain roads, and the driver was basically, in the tailpipe of the person in front of us. And it's there's no room for error if we hit the brakes. I mean, obviously we made it and nobody died, but it was a harrowing experience for me just because it was so nerve wracking. Obviously very normal for them. They didn't find it very odd. Obviously the way they drive, they're used to it, but I was white knuckling the seat.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Where's my handle?
And stupid me had sat right in the very front because I wanted to be able to see from the windows on all sides to see everything, which meant I was able to see the cars in front of us that were way too close.
Pedestrians.
And I was just,
animals.
A little car sick by the time we got there.
So did you sit in the back on the way home? I know we're skipping here, but did you learn your lesson and I'm going to get in the trunk?
Okay. On the way home, we all went in one really, really big, those charter buses,
yeah.
So it's much bigger bus. It wasn't the small bus that held 2 groups when we got there. And no, I was not by the window. I was closer to not the back, but safely in the middle. It was not as harrowing.
Yeah.
Still terrifying.
Of course.
But not as bad as, as the ride down there, but also kind of knew what to expect. So
by the grace of God, you made it alive to the compound.
Yeah, that person falling out of the car and kissing the ground.
That was Melanie. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you made it. What happens next? Other than the prayers of gratitude.
Yeah, exactly. Happens? Right. So we got there, and the place where we were staying is an entirely enclosed, secure, for lack of a better word, I guess I would say compound, but it's a children's home, and it's a boys and girls home they have several different ones throughout Central America. And this is, the one that's in Honduras. And on the property of the children's home is our surgery center and the clinic and everything else. So they are on the same property. One World Surgery is on the same property as this children's home. And it's enclosed. It's, 24-hour security, up in the mountains. It's very safe, very secure place. And they have it's called the Moscati Center. It's named after Father Moscati, who is a priest. I could look up his story and tell it to you. It's neat to look up his influence with the community there. But the center has a very big gym area and stage and whatnot. So we can have meetings, we could have food, we could play pickleball or any other game that we were playing. And then around that, it's almost the building was built in a huge square. And on one side of the square was that big public area, gym area and meeting area. And then the other 3 walls were all walls of rooms, and they all opened up into a central open courtyard. So we got there, we go to that meeting room, and we, had our introductory meeting explanation. Hey, here's your roommates. Here's your room key. Go find your room, all these things. And really it was more just kind of get settled in, dinner's coming. And then on Sunday, we would be having orientation to the clinic and to the surgery center and all of that. So it really was Saturday was just kind of a travel day. Here's all the rest of the information you need. And then go crash, take a shower, do whatever, and, get ready for the next day.
Decompress. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so did you have an idea of the types of surgeries that you all were going to be encountering prior to the mission trip starting?
Yes, because, well, let me say that. Yes, and thankfully so,
Right.
because we all know that perioperative services is huge, and there are multiple specialties within our specialty, and everybody is good at something different, and everybody likes different things. And one of the things that One World Surgery does is they send different they call them brigades, like the mission teams, but they send different brigades throughout the year, and different brigades do different specialties. So you might have GYN going down one time, orthopedics, eyes, other specialties that go and do their surgeries. And yours truly loves orthopedics.
Uh-huh.
I would not be signing up for GYN or ENT because that is not my favorite specialty.
I'm glad
But
one
other
of
people
us
like
likes
it.
ortho.
And I'm glad that other people like GYN and ENT because it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But this was primarily ortho. They also did eyes on Monday and Wednesday while we were there, but everything else was orthopedic. So, and they tell you when you look on their website, like, you know, the teams that are going, what services they're going to be offering. So you can kind of look and see what fits with your specialty and your expertise. But yeah, so I knew that we were doing orthopedics. Beyond that, I had no idea. And I didn't get to see a schedule. I didn't know. There is a fully functioning medical clinic there as well with a on-staff doctor, and there's an orthopedic surgeon there, and they have people that are there all the time. It's not like the brigades come in, do stuff and leave, and then they're left without anything. Like they are a fully functioning clinic. And so their doctor that's there will see patients. They will get the patients lined up that we're going to be doing surgery on. Like we show up, our surgery schedule's ready, and then we just go to town and do it. And so it was kind of all ready for us. And
that's nice.
Nice.
Did you pull your cases? How did you get to know what things you had available to you or didn't? I always wonder about that. Like, how was your preference card, Melanie Perry?
I don't never think I ever looked at a preference card, Chris Blevins. Not that they didn't have them, because I did see the scrubs looking at them a little bit. One thing that I benefited from, which is obviously something that we talk about time and time again, is how it actually makes preference cards never right, is because I had a scrub who always worked with Dr. Redler. So she didn't need the preference card she already knew what he needed. And so it was great. I mean, I was on cloud 9 when I found out that she was Dr. Redler's regular scrub. I'm like, yes.
Oh my gosh.
You know, because I'm already, well, you think about it, you know, I am like odd man out showing up, you know, with this team. A lot of people already know each other, or, you know, I've talked to Dr. Redler and met him professionally, and I've met him through the podcast and all of the education that we do for perioperative services. I say that I'm a good OR nurse, but yeah, I mean, then you got to feel like, oh shoot, now I got to prove myself.
Exactly.
And you know, that feeling anytime you're new and you're like, you don't want to screw up. You don't want to embarrass yourself. You don't want to make them regret, you know, approving you to come be part of this team. So I was already on edge. And then to have Shannon, his scrub there, I was like, oh, thank you, God. This will be so, no, not that we didn't have our hiccups, just because we were in a new location, but Shannon made things so much better.
There's nothing like that team, you know?
Nothing like a great scrub. I mean, oh my gosh.
Thanks. Yeah. We feel the same way about our circulating nurses. You know that team, you walk in, you're like, oh, it's you.
Yeah.
Oh, today's going to be such a good day.
Yeah, today's going to be so good. Yeah. And but to answer your question about pulling cases, they also have a regular staff there too. And so the staff would pull the cases based on the prep cards, and then the scrubs would go through and add what they needed, you know, kind of like here. The Sunday that we got our orientation, the 3 scrubs that we had, because we had 3 ORs. So we had 3 scrubs, and one of them had been there before. And so he was kind of helping us find where different things were. And then they have a charge nurse. His name was JC. And JC was, I mean, like, that's career goals right there, to be as awesome as JC is, because I mean, he was always there before we got there, after we left. I mean, he smile on his face, very helpful, very knowledgeable, and just he was just a really hard worker and very good addition to the OR there. And it was I don't think I could have functioned if he hadn't been there because, I mean, that it's that unknown. Yeah. Where is this tray? Where do I find this? Where do I get this? And then also the communication differences. And you would think it was the communication difference between me and the people that spoke Spanish. And that's not actually the case.
Really?
It was actually the communication differences between me and this Shannon, because we work in different places. We've been trained differently. And she would call instruments one thing and I would call them something else. And we didn't know what we were talking about. And trying to go find instruments when I don't understand what you just told me because I don't know this word. Yeah. and I can't picture it because I don't know what we're talking about. And then trying to find it, and then you find it and you're like, oh, that's what you're talking about, and then you realize, we weren't communicating simply because of that constant problem in the OR where everything has 5 and 10 different names and we all call it different stuff.
Yeah.
So that was humorous later. In the moment, it got a little stressful,
of course,
but it was good. And obviously, I'm not fluent in Spanish by any means, but JC did speak English. And so it was easy to communicate with him. And then he would come in when we were getting our patients on the table or waking them up. And he was there to really help make sure that they heard their own language so that they really knew that they were safe, what we were doing, and they were more cooperative. That's always better, right? When you hear your own language spoken to you.
Well, to calm them. I mean, we've talked a lot about different ways to calm patients postoperatively and, how it decreases complications. Wait, September, season 11's coming. So
exactly.
We can't wait
for them. Just reorienting them to time and space and in their own language is so much better than us with our Southern accent Spanish trying to, it works, but always better if it's your own language.
So speaking of patients and making them comfortable and just their experience, I mean, we've talked a lot about the operative team experience, but is there an experience you had with a patient maybe that stands out to you the most during this mission trip?
Well, there was a couple. One of them was a patient that we had that was actually put into our room because OR2 was running long on their first case and they didn't have time to get to it. And we were finished because one of ours hadn't shown up. The usual, hey, let's do it over here because y'all are free.
Normal day.
normal day. An OR is an OR no matter what country you're in. But the beautiful thing about that though was that patient was another surgeon's patient. But the surgeons that were in my room, Dr. Redler, Dr. Sigmund, they were there to help. They were there to just assist, to provide any other input or expertise that they could. Obviously, the other surgeon was in the room too. And we also had an orthopedic fellow there too, because another cool thing about this surgery center is they have an orthopedic fellowship there. So for local surgeons in training, they can come do a fellowship. So we had our ortho fellow in there.
They get to learn from these amazing people like Dr. Redler. What an opportunity.
Dr. Redler, Dr. Sigmund, Dr. Modaber, like these docs, and they're there and they were gladly sharing their expertise and training these fellows, and so amazing. But this particular patient had he had an ORIF of his humerus at one point. He had plates and screws in his humerus, and one of the screws was not in the right spot on the bottom of the plate, and it had gone into the joint and it had fused his joint. And then he had also developed some bone growth on his radius and ulna, which had kept him from having that lateral movement of your arm that you needed. So they go in and they're originally, because there was a top plate and a bottom plate, and they were originally just going to take off the top plate, remove some screws, and, they're still trying to work with his arm, to try to see where we can get that rotation back, that movement. And it's like the more they worked, the more they found, and the more they looked, the more there was
down the hole
to do.
They go. Yeah.
Yeah, really. But they didn't stop. They just kept going until they knew that patient, when they recovered, had as much rotation of the lateral movement of their forearm, but also extension of their elbow. So they had what they needed to get back to their life, and so that they could function and be a productive member of their family again. And so that kind of just commitment to the patient care, and to see that patient got the full extent of the surgical care that they needed, because these surgeons were like, oh, wait, we need to keep going. Oh, hold on. Let's keep doing this. And so it was refreshing to participate in something like that and just to have a part of it. We also had another patient who was actually in medical school in Honduras, and he spoke English. So it was one of those things that's a lot easier, I think, to connect to somebody who speaks your own language, just because you're not going through an interpreter or stammering out your, attempts at their language. So it was easy just to connect. But also I learned an interesting thing about medical school in Honduras. Here, if our doctors go to medical school, they have the first 4 years where they're, getting their bachelor's degree, and then they have the 4 years of medical school. And then after that, they have their residency. In Honduras, it's apart from the residency, but like the first education part, the 8 years there, it's all just medical school. You don't have it divided up into undergrad and grad, or however they divide it. I didn't go to medical school, but it's all just medical school. And you're like a first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, sixth year, seventh year, eighth year, like all the way up, and just whatever year of medical school you are. So as soon as you begin the program, you just go through till you're done. And that's it. I mean, I can see the benefit to just the consistency of staying in one program from the time you start to the time you finish, versus doing the 4 years and you have your bachelor's degree and then you have to go get accepted to medical school and then you have your 4 years of medical school. It's all just one thing. So he was, I think, in his 5th or 6th year of medical school, he said. So he was getting close to being finished, and he had talked about potentially wanting to be a surgeon. It was just fun to talk to him, to learn how things are different in Honduras and how they do school. It was eye-opening.
It's neat. Well, and I think also any of us who have had to be in the role of the patient, it makes us a better care provider when you get that other perspective. So I hate that he went through that, but at the same time, like, his patients are going to be really lucky that he has that understanding, Oh yeah. Firsthand experience does definitely give you empathy. Absolutely. What did you take away from this experience outside of getting to meet amazing care teams and under the lead of Dr. Redler and Dr. Sigmund and the anesthesia teams? Like, is there something else that just you personally took away from this mission trip? There were actually 2 big things that I took away. The first one actually had to do and influenced season 11 of our podcast, but it had to do with pain control and how regional anesthesia can really be beneficial in helping patients recover from surgery with that long-term effect of the anesthesia when they get out of surgery, and they are able to recover without that surgical pain, hitting them in the face so quickly after they wake up. And watching Dr. Bowling and the CRNA team that helped her do those blocks, and because the way this center was set up, our ORs, we had 3 ORs. We had, it was like this just one really big room, and there's 3 ORs on one side, and then you look to the left and there's a hallway of instruments, and then right in front of that was our PACU. So we were all just there, and they were doing the blocks in PACU. We would get them in the OR. We would take them back to the other side of PACU where they would recover. And then phase 2 was like right around the corner. I mean, it would go out a door and then you were in phase 2. But we actually got to go talk to those patients in phase 2 and see them before they left. We don't get to do that in our ORs. Sometimes it's a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of thing. And they go in, they go out, and we are just back and forth, and we only see them for their operative procedure, and we don't ever see the follow-up. So to see those patients in phase 2, to see them not hurting and their blocks were working, and to hear the follow-up later from the clinic physician to know that they just really didn't need anything other than some ibuprofen and Tylenol for some discomfort. It's just mind-blowing and very, very different than what you expect. But just to see it firsthand was like, wow, that's really cool and just really impressive how it worked. And not just to see it, but also just to be able to witness the fact that they aren't hurting, and to be able to speak to that as you did so well during season 11, that, there are alternatives without pain. It's that's amazing. It was very eye-opening, because it's like, as a nurse, you see the patients in the block room, you pick them up, you bring them to the OR, you make sure their arm or their leg doesn't fall off the bed while you're positioning them, and you do this stuff, but you don't see the after effect
unless you are personally a patient or you have a family member who's a patient. You don't see how it works on the other end. And to actually get to see all of that, it was like, wow. So it was just very educational, very eye-opening to see the full spread of how they managed post-surgical pain from the very beginning, as soon as the patients got there and what they were doing. So definitely a immerse yourself in it to learn it, but it was good. The other thing that actually I didn't realize struck me until I got back was I went on this trip. It was from a Saturday to a Saturday, and then I had to be at work the following Tuesday. So I'm in my own OR the following Tuesday after having gotten back from Honduras, and I go to see my first patient, and I said, told him who I was, that I was going to be their nurse for their procedure. And he spoke back to me in English, and we were able to talk. And it was that just, I don't know, reorienting. Oh yeah, I can communicate with my patients. And sure, we don't talk to our patients very much at all. OR nurses, surgical techs.
I was about to say, we don't get to talk to our patients ever.
Get to talk to them.
Not with them, without them being on Versed.
Yeah, exactly. So that you're never remembered for sure.
Yeah.
And nurses, we get these little, which sometimes can be nice, I will admit, but we get these little just brief interviews of interactions with our patients before we go. And we have a whole lot to do in that little bit of time to decrease anxiety, to reassure a patient that they're in good hands, that we're going to take care of them, that they are safe, that everything's going to be okay. And you get very little time to do that. And then you throw in the inability to speak their language. You throw in the lack of communication because of a language barrier. And suddenly that little bit of time that we have to speak to them is even shorter. And we don't get to do the full, we are not able to provide that comfort that we normally can if we can speak their language. So then here I am that Tuesday after this mission trip, and I go to talk to my first patient, and it was like, oh, okay. And then that's when I think the realization hit me. I'm like, I really do value this short bit of time with my patients before surgery. And the fact that I can speak to them and communicate with them and reassure them is very important to me. And I know that it's important to my patient, but knowing that I can connect with them is huge. And so that was kind of one of those after effect takeaways, but it was, it really struck me.
Yeah. Well, and rightfully so. You make a big difference to a patient, and having to gain that trust in such a little snippet of their life it's a big task, but, the great OR nurses do it very well. So, well,
we try.
So, here's what we say at every podcast end.
I know.
We're running out of time.
We are. I think we were out of time about 5 minutes ago, but it's okay.
It's okay.
It's a good conversation.
Absolutely. So, final takeaways, Melanie. You never get to do these.
I don't.
So what are, you get the last word. What is your takeaway from this experience, and what would you want our listeners to know?
Honestly, I would just encourage anyone who is interested in participating in any type of mission work, charity work, surgical mission work. It doesn't have to be big and grandiose and out of the country and somewhere else. It can be right here in our hometowns, but we can give back. We have the expertise, the experience, and the knowledge to make a difference to those people who really need it. And there are ways that you can get involved. And so if you are interested in getting involved, you can certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to share more of my experience or connect you with people I know, but you can also just look around. There are plenty of organizations out there that are making a difference, and you can be a part of it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again for being interviewed. And
I know
you did such a great job.
Well, thank you.
It was very fun.
Chris, that was a great discussion. I enjoyed it so much to be able to just share what I experienced, but then also to kind of help tie in all of the references for season 11 back into what in the world it is we're talking about. But I love that we have the platform and the opportunity to be able to have discussions like these.
I agree. And the fact that you were able to give back and that you met so many other amazing people who have that sense of service to others in their heart. And then to hear all of the amazing things that they also are passionate about in season 11, it just is very inspiring. And I hope that it inspires others to also give back in whatever means they can.
Yeah, just wherever you can give back. Find places where you can give back. Get involved. You will be so thankful that you took the time to do it. And that is going to do it for this week's special release episode of First Case. Stay tuned because season 11 starts next week. And on behalf of Chris, myself, and the whole team here at First Case, thanks for listening to this week's podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of First Case. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to First Case on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on iPhone or Android. Simply search for First Case in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@firstcasemedia.com. We look forward to hearing from you.